Professor Krelnak stood at the podium of the Grand Amphitheater at Galactic University, his four eyes gleaming with the kind of self-satisfaction that only comes from 40 years of dedicated research and a tenure position that's basically impossible to revoke. The amphitheater was packed. Standing room only. Students from 17 different species had crammed themselves into every available space, and why wouldn't they? This was the lecture of the semester. And so, Krelnak announced, his translator perfectly capturing his dramatic pause, "We come to the most fascinating element of my research. The Terran Berserkers." The holographic display behind him shifted to show grainy footage from the human-Krellian border conflicts, circa 200 years ago. A human soldier, completely unremarkable in appearance, picked up a disabled combat mech and used it as a battering ram against an enemy position. Mythical warriors, Krelnak continued, his voice dropping to a reverent whisper that the auditorium's acoustics carried perfectly. Super soldiers from a bygone era. Peak genetic engineering combined with chemical enhancement protocols that have been lost to time. The ancient humans created the perfect killing machines, and then, mysteriously, the entire program vanished. No records, no survivors, nothing. A Valorian student in the third row raised a tentacle. "Professor, what evidence do we have that these were enhanced soldiers and not just, regular humans?" Krelnak's eyes narrowed. Someone hadn't done the assigned reading. "Because, Mr. Trellick, baseline biology does not allow for such feats. Observe." He clicked to the next slide. A human female, barely 5 feet tall according to the measurements, was captured mid-action lifting a ground transport vehicle off another person. This image was recovered from Earth's information archives. The strength-to-weight ratio is physically impossible without significant enhancement. My calculations suggest genetic modifications to at least 70% of their muscular system, plus reinforced skeletal structure, plus neural pathway augmentation for pain suppression and reaction time. The audience murmured appreciatively. This was good stuff, real academic rigor. "These beings," Krelnak said, warming to his favorite part of the lecture, "were treated as gods of war by their own people. Revered. Feared. The old records refer to them with titles of respect and awe. They performed impossible acts of strength and endurance, shrugged off injuries that would kill any of us 3 times over, and displayed a level of aggressive tenacity that frankly terrified every species they encountered." He clicked through more images. Humans running into burning buildings. Humans continuing to fight with injuries that should have incapacitated them. Humans doing something called a tough mudder that looked like voluntary torture. The tragedy, of course, is that this magnificent program died out. Modern humans are pale shadows of their berserker ancestors. Weaker, softer. The genetic modifications couldn't be maintained. Or perhaps the chemicals required were lost. Or, excuse me, Professor. Krelnak stopped mid-sentence. Someone was interrupting his lecture. His carefully prepared, meticulously researched, career-defining lecture. A human student stood up in the back row. Young, wearing what appeared to be a jacket advertising something called Earth's Okayest Coffee. Name tag read, Danny Torres. "Yes, Mr. Torres?" Krelnak said, his tone suggesting that this interruption had better be important. "Yeah, hi. Sorry," Danny said, not sounding sorry at all. "Quick question. These mythical berserker super soldiers you've been talking about for the last 45 minutes, they sound exactly like my Uncle Bob." The amphitheater went silent. Krelnak's primary eyes blinked, then his secondary eyes. "I'm sorry, what?" "My Uncle Bob," Danny repeated helpfully. "And like, most of the guys from the VFW hall back home. And honestly, a solid 70% of the people at any given family reunion." Professor Krelnak's facial ridges deepened into what was unmistakably offense. "Mr. Torres, I understand that humans have a peculiar sense of humor, but I have dedicated 4 decades to this research. These are not jokes. These are historical facts about an extinct warrior caste that—" "Yeah, no, I get it," Danny interrupted, pulling out his personal comm device. "But respectfully, Professor, I don't think they're extinct. I think you've just been reading really old reports and assuming humans changed. We didn't. We're still like that." A Zentari student 2 rows ahead turned around. "What do you mean you're still like that?" "I mean exactly what I said." Danny was scrolling through his photo gallery now. "Okay, so this is Uncle Bob at my cousin's graduation party last year." He held up his device. The holographic projector helpfully magnified the image for the whole auditorium. A middle-aged human male, slightly overweight, holding a beer and grinning at the camera. "Completely unremarkable. This is your evidence against my research?" Krelnak sputtered. A photograph of an ordinary human at a social gathering? Hold on. I'm getting to it. Danny swiped to the next image. Same man. Same party. Casually holding what appeared to be a malfunctioning grill over his head with one hand while investigating its underside. So the propane tank was stuck, right? And Uncle Bob didn't want to miss the burgers, so he just kind of picked the whole thing up to get a better angle. Several students leaned forward. This image proves nothing, Krelnak insisted. That apparatus couldn't weigh more than 400 pounds, Danny said. I checked. Aunt Marie yelled at him about it for like 20 minutes. Said he was going to throw his back out again. Again? Someone whispered. Danny kept scrolling. Oh, here's a good one. This is from when Uncle Bob accidentally ripped the driver's side door completely off his truck. The image showed a man holding a truck door with an expression of mild confusion and annoyance. How does one accidentally remove a vehicle door? Professor Krelnak asked, his academic curiosity temporarily overriding his indignation. Someone told him the beer in the cooler was getting warm. He was in a hurry. Danny shrugged. Honestly, it was already a little loose. He'd only had the truck for like 8 years. A nervous laugh rippled through the auditorium. It died quickly when they realized Danny wasn't joking. Mr. Torres, Krelnak said slowly, are you genuinely suggesting that this Uncle Bob of yours is representative of normal human capabilities? I mean, yeah? He's a retired plumber, watches a lot of football, makes pretty decent nachos, gets real intense about lawn care. Danny paused. Oh, and he once carried my aunt's entire book collection down from the attic in one trip because he didn't want to make 2. That's like 300 books. Aunt Marie says the floor joists bent. The Valorian student who'd asked the earlier question raised his tentacle again. But the chemical enhancements, the genetic modifications. Surely, dude, Uncle Bob's only enhancement is whatever's in Miller Lite and high cholesterol medication. Danny was really getting into this now. Look, I'm not saying all humans are out here ripping mechs apart. Most of us are pretty chill. But like, if you give us a good enough reason, yeah, we can do that stuff. It's not mythology. It's just adrenaline and poor decision-making skills. Impossible, Krelnak declared. The feats I've documented require biological impossibilities, pain suppression beyond rational limits, strength outputs that exceed muscular capability, aggression that defies survival instinct. Right, Danny said. So like, that's just humans when we're upset, or protective, or someone insults our cooking, or threatens our pets. Or look, there's a lot of triggers, okay? A Krellian student in the front row looked like she was having a panic attack. How many humans are there in the galaxy? Last census said about 40 billion, give or take, Danny answered helpfully. She made a sound that the translator rendered as distressed whimpering. This is absurd, Professor Krelnak announced, drawing himself up to his full height. You cannot expect me to believe that the legendary berserkers of ancient human warfare were simply ordinary civilians having what you call a bad day. Danny grinned. Well, Professor, there's one way to settle this. You want proof? Let me call home. I bet Uncle Bob's still up. Professor Krelnak stared at Danny Torres like the student had just suggested they settle their academic dispute with a thumb wrestling match. You want to call your uncle? Right now. In the middle of my lecture. I mean, you said you wanted proof, Danny said reasonably. And Uncle Bob's probably watching the game anyway. He won't mind. The game, Krelnak repeated flatly. Yeah, Tuesdays are usually baseball. Or wait, no, it's October. Hockey season. Danny was already pulling up his contact list. Either way, he's definitely awake. A Zentari professor in the observer section leaned forward with interest. I would actually very much like to see this. Krelnak shot her a betrayed look, but the damage was done. The entire auditorium was now invested in this supremely ridiculous turn of events. He sighed, his translator capturing the full weight of his academic dignity circling the drain. Fine. Make your call, Mr. Torres. When this uncle of yours fails to demonstrate even a fraction of berserker capabilities, we can return to serious scholarship. Danny tapped his comm device. The holographic projector automatically linked to it, displaying the call screen for everyone to see. It rang 3 times. The face that appeared was definitely Uncle Bob from the screen. Photos. Older human male, slightly rumpled, wearing a shirt that said, I'm not arguing. I'm just explaining why I'm right. Behind him was a living room lit by the glow of a wall screen, showing what appeared to be grown humans hitting a small rubber disc with sticks. Danny? Uncle Bob squinted at the screen. Kid, it's 3 in the morning your time. You okay? Someone giving you trouble? Because I can get on a shuttle and be there in like, no, Uncle Bob, I'm fine, Danny said quickly. This is actually for school. I'm in my xenobiology lecture and my professor has been telling us about ancient human super soldiers, and I mentioned you. And now he doesn't believe that regular humans can do the stuff from his research. Uncle Bob blinked. What stuff? Like the lifting heavy things and ripping doors off and fighting through injuries and… Oh, that stuff. Yeah, sure, everybody does that. Uncle Bob scratched his head. Hang on, let me get Marie. She's better at explaining. Mary, Danny's on the phone and needs us to do something for school. A female voice from off-screen. It's 3 in the morning there. Is he in trouble? No, he needs a demonstration. A demonstration of what? I dunno, normal people stuff. The camera view suddenly expanded as more faces crowded into frame. Aunt Marie appeared, wearing a bathrobe and holding a cup of coffee that suggested she'd already been awake. Next to her was a younger human male with a concerning number of visible scars. Hey Danny, the scarred one said. Cousin Pete here. What's up? Oh good. Pete's there, Danny said. Professor, that's my cousin. He's banned from 3 planets. 5 now, Pete corrected cheerfully. The Krellian thing got upgraded to a system-wide restriction. Professor Krelnak found his voice. Banned for what exactly? Excessive enthusiasm, Pete said, and 1 count of unlicensed vessel operation, and maybe some light weapons trafficking. But that was a misunderstanding because I thought the war was still… The war ended 60 years ago. A new voice bellowed from off-screen. An elderly human shuffled into frame, wearing pajamas covered in what appeared to be small Earth spacecraft. Mr. Henderson, Danny said with genuine delight. Professor, this is my neighbor, Mr. Henderson. He's 94. 96, Henderson corrected. And I keep telling people, the treaty was very unclear about the ceasefire zones. How was I supposed to know the Proxima engagement had ended when I was still pinned down in Sector 7? Krelnak's eyes widened. The Battle of Proxima. You were at the Battle of Proxima? Was that it? Son, I hold the record for longest sustained defensive position, 43 days. Would have been longer, but they finally sent someone to tell me we'd won and I could come home. Henderson peered at the screen. You're that Valorian professor who wrote that book about it, aren't you? Read it last year. You got the casualty numbers all wrong. I used official military records, Krelnak said weakly. Yeah, those were adjusted for morale purposes. Actual numbers were way higher. On both sides, it was a real mess. Henderson sipped from a mug that said, World's okayest soldier. Aunt Marie took control of the conversation. Okay, so Danny, what exactly do you need us to demonstrate for your class? Danny looked around the amphitheater, which had gone from packed lecture hall to riveted audience, watching what was essentially reality television from Earth. So, Professor Krelnak has spent 40 years researching what he thinks were genetically enhanced super soldiers from ancient human history. I'm trying to explain that's just how humans are normally. Can you guys just, show some everyday stuff? Uncle Bob looked confused. What kind of everyday stuff? I don't know. Just normal things you do that might seem impressive to non-humans. Kid, I fixed a carburetor this morning and had a sandwich, Uncle Bob said. I'm not exactly performing miracles here. Uncle Bob, you ripped a door off your truck because someone said the beer was getting warm. Well, yeah. Priorities. Uncle Bob seemed to think this was self-explanatory. Hang on, let me think. Oh, I got that shipping container delivered yesterday. Still haven't found the keys. I can show you how I've been getting into it. The camera view shifted as Uncle Bob stood up, and suddenly the entire auditorium was following a phone camera through a suburban Earth home at 3 in the morning. They passed through a kitchen where the refrigerator had a concerning dent in it, through a back door, and into a yard where a large military-grade shipping container sat on the grass. Okay, so these locks are rated for, industrial security or whatever, Uncle Bob explained, grabbing the reinforced steel door with both hands. But the seal gets a little loose if you just he pulled. There was a screech of protesting metal. The locking mechanism designed to withstand forced entry just sort of gave up. The door swung open. There we go. I really gotta call the company and get new keys. In the amphitheater, a student made a sound like air escaping from a balloon. What's in the container? Danny asked. Christmas decorations, and Marie's old pottery wheel, and I think some of Pete's stuff from when he had to leave Krellian space real quick. The camera swung back around as they returned inside. Aunt Marie had taken over. Okay, my turn. Danny, remember when you asked why we had to replace the garage wall last summer? You said there was water damage. Well, there was damage. Water wasn't really the cause, though. She led the camera to the garage. So, Pete's kid, your little cousin Sarah, was riding her bike in the driveway. Driver comes down the street going like 40 in a residential zone, doesn't see her, and I just kind of reacted. She gestured to a workbench where a bowling ball Saturday. Not a regular bowling ball. This one had a visible impact crater in it. I grabbed what was available and threw it at the car's engine block to stop it. Worked great. Car stopped immediately. Driver was fine, just very surprised. Sarah was fine. The ball went through our garage wall, through the Johnsons' fence, and landed in their pool. You threw a bowling ball through an engine block, Professor Krelnak said faintly. 16-pound ball, Mama Bear adrenaline, questionable decision-making, Aunt Marie said cheerfully. The police report was hilarious. They kept asking if I used a catapult. Cousin Pete grabbed the phone. Oh, we're showing off? Hang on. He disappeared briefly and returned with a box that made several species in the auditorium recoil. So these are from my misunderstanding with the Krellian Defense Force. He pulled out what was unmistakably a military-grade plasma rifle. Then another. Then something that looked like it could take out a small building. Pete, are those legal? Danny asked. I mean, they weren't illegal when I found them. Finders keepers, right? Pete grinned. The Krellians got mad because I kept quote-unquote liberating equipment from their forward positions. But see, I thought we were still at war. So technically I was just doing my job as a... There was no war. Mr. Henderson shouted, shuffling back into frame. The Krellian incident was a police action, you delinquent. Mr. Henderson thought there was a war for 60 years. Pete shot back. That was different. Proxima had unclear communications. I had a legitimate reason to think. Henderson paused. Wait, who's teaching this class? What university? Galactic University, Danny said. Professor Krelnak is doing a lecture on human berserkers. Henderson's eyes narrowed. Krelnak, you wrote that the human forces at Proxima suffered 40% casualties and withdrew after 3 weeks. That is what the official records state, Krelnak said defensively. The official records are propaganda. We had 82% casualties and stayed for 6 weeks. I was there. I have the scars and the therapy bills to prove it. Henderson was getting worked up now. And that bit about the humans retreating? We didn't retreat. The command told us to stop because we'd accidentally pushed 15 miles past the objective, and 3 units refused to fall back because they'd made friends with some local civilians and didn't want to leave them. Unprotected. A Krellian student in the front row was frantically taking notes. Also, Henderson continued, that story about the lone human holding off an entire battalion? That was Corporal Jenkins, and it wasn't a battalion, it was a company. Get your numbers right. And he wasn't even trying to be heroic. He was just really mad because they'd interrupted his lunch, and he takes his mealtime seriously. Uncle Bob leaned into frame. Danny, is your professor okay? He looks kind of pale. Can Valorians go pale? Professor Krelnak was indeed looking unwell. His 4 eyes were unfocused and his facial ridges had gone completely flat. Professor Krelnak stood at his podium, gripping its edges like a drowning man clutching driftwood. Behind him, his 40 years of research glowed on the holographic display, each slide now feeling less like academic triumph and more like a monument to profound misunderstanding. Let me see if I understand correctly, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The berserkers, the legendary warriors, the super soldiers of ancient human mythology, he paused, are just regular humans, having a moderately stressful day, or protecting family, Aunt Marie added helpfully from the phone screen, or really hungry, or defending their pets, or someone insulted their cooking. Honestly, there's a lot of triggers. I have spent 4 decades, Krelnak continued, seemingly to himself, developing a comprehensive theory about lost genetic enhancement programs. I proposed neural augmentation, skeletal reinforcement, chemical dependency protocols. I wrote 3 books. I gave lectures on 15 worlds. I have a research grant. Had a research grant, someone in the audience whispered. Uncle Bob looked sympathetic. Listen, Professor, if it makes you feel better, you're not the first person to overthink humans. Last year, some Zentari anthropologists spent 6 months studying our funeral customs and concluded we must have religious death cults because we keep flowers near dead people and gather to eat casseroles. We just really like casseroles. In the 3rd row, a student fainted, just straight up slumped over. 2 of his friends caught him. Another student, a Valorian like Krelnak, raised a shaking tentacle. Question, how many humans did you say live in the galaxy? About 40 billion, Danny repeated. And they're all capable of these feats? I mean, not all of us. My roommate Greg can barely open a jar of pickles. But like, a solid percentage? Yeah, if properly motivated. The Valorian did some quick calculations on his data pad, went very still, and then quietly closed his device. I'm transferring to the art history program. Coward, muttered a Krellian student, though she also looked deeply unsettled. Mr. Henderson was still on screen, now sitting in an armchair and warming to his topic. You want to know the real story of Proxima? The official report said humans fought with discipline and military precision. You know what actually happened? Private Morrison adopted a local six-legged cat thing, named it Sergeant Whiskers, and when the enemy advance threatened the civilian sector where Whiskers lived, Morrison's entire squad went absolutely feral. They held a supply depot for 16 hours with no reinforcements because Morrison told them Whiskers was in there and nobody was going to let anything happen to Sergeant Whiskers. Did Sergeant Whiskers survive? Someone in the auditorium asked. Lived to age 19 and died peacefully in K's. Morrison's apartment on Earth. There's a statue of that cat at the Proxima Memorial. Henderson sipped his coffee. The plague says, inspiration for unprecedented defensive action. It should say, reason. A bunch of humans lost their minds and refused to retreat. Professor Krelnak sat down heavily in a chair. That hadn't been there a moment ago. Someone had thoughtfully brought it on stage. The strength ratios, he mumbled. The pain tolerance. The aggressive persistence. I calculated it all. I had models. Peer-reviewed models. You weren't wrong about the capabilities, Danny offered. Just the reasons behind them. That's worse. That's so much worse. Krelnak's voice cracked. You're saying evolution just randomly decided to make humans into biological weapons, and then gave them no natural enemies to explain why they needed to be biological weapons? Oh, we had natural enemies, Uncle Bob said. Pretty much everything on Earth wanted to kill us at some point. We just got really good at returning the favor. Cousin Pete leaned into frame. Hey, Professor, if it helps, most humans are totally peaceful. We just have a really specific switch. Like, 99% of the time we're super chill. We'll share our food, help you move, explain our weird customs. But that last 1%, he grinned. That's when someone threatens the people we care about. Or our pets. Or insults Grandma's cooking at Thanksgiving. What happens at Thanksgiving? A terrified student asked. It's a food-based holiday where families gather and relitigate decades-old arguments while eating turkey, Danny explained. Last year, Uncle Bob got into a disagreement with my other uncle about proper gravy consistency, and they didn't speak for 3 months. But nobody got violent? Krelnak asked, hopefully. I mean, define violent. There was some aggressive table slapping. The amphitheater had started to empty. Slowly at first, then with increasing urgency. Students gathered their belongings and made for the exits with the kind of purposeful speed that suggested they were rethinking their entire academic focus. The Zentari professor from earlier stood up. Krelnak, I'm going to recommend we revise the entire xenobiology curriculum. To what? Krelnak asked miserably. Humans. They're just like that. A semester-long apology for every assumption we've ever made. The Grand Amphitheater of Galactic University, which 15 minutes ago had been packed with eager students ready to learn about mythical human super-soldiers, now resembled the aftermath of someone yelling free drinks at a bar and then admitting they were joking. The exodus was nearly complete. Only a handful of students remained, mostly the ones too shocked to move or frantically rewriting their thesis proposals. Professor Krelnak sat in his chair on stage, staring at his hands like they might hold answers. They did not. Behind him, his presentation still glowed, frozen on a slide titled, Genetic Modifications, a Comprehensive Analysis. It felt accusatory now. Danny was wrapping up the call. Okay, thanks, Uncle Bob. Thanks, Aunt Marie. Pete, maybe don't show off the illegal weapons to my classmates next time. They're not illegal. They're undocumented. Pete corrected. Mr. Henderson, great seeing you. Try to stay out of trouble. I'm 96 years old. Trouble finds me. Henderson grumbled. Also, tell your professor to fix his book. The casualty numbers are still bothering me. I'm gonna write a letter. Please don't write a letter. Too late. Already started. Uncle Bob's face filled the screen one last time. Hey, Danny, before you go. You sure everything's okay up there? Nobody's giving you a hard time? Because I'm serious. I can get on a shuttle. It's only like a 6-hour flight to the university station. I can be there by lunch. The remaining students perked up with visible alarm. One of them started packing faster. No, Uncle Bob. I promise everything's fine, Danny said quickly. This was just for a class demonstration. Nobody's in trouble. Because you know me and your aunt, we don't like the idea of you being up there all alone if someone's bothering you. I can bring Pete. And Henderson's got that thing with his hip, but he'd probably come too if we asked. That is absolutely not necessary. Your cousin Sarah's got her pilot's license now. She could fly us. Well, she's got her provisional license. She's only failed the parallel parking part twice. Uncle Bob, I love you. But please do not organize a rescue mission for a situation that doesn't exist. Uncle Bob looked vaguely disappointed. All right, if you're sure. But you call if anything changes. Anytime, day or night. We're family. That's what we do. I know. That's what I was literally just explaining to my professor. Good kid. Your mom says hi, by the way. She wants to know if you're eating enough. And she's reminding you that Thanksgiving is next month. You're coming home, right? A sense of dread washed over Danny's face. About Thanksgiving. Now don't start. Your mom's already planning the menu. I'm doing the turkey again. Uncle Bob. Last year, the turkey incident. That was not my fault. How was I supposed to know you're not supposed to deep fry a frozen turkey? The internet made it look easy. You burned down the gazebo. The gazebo was already structurally unsound. I was doing your parents a favor. Aunt Marie's voice came from off-screen. Bob, you launched a fireball 15 feet into the air and set the neighbor's tree on fire. Minor setback. The tree was fine. Mostly fine. It grew back. It's still growing back, honey. Look, this year will be different, Uncle Bob said firmly. I watched 3 entire tutorial videos. I got a new fryer. I measured the oil twice. I'm only doing 1 turkey instead of 2. It's gonna be perfect. That's what you said last year, Danny pointed out. Yeah, but this time I mean it. Uncle Bob paused. Probably. Anyway, you're coming home, right? Your mom will kill me if you don't. I'll be there, Danny sighed. Wouldn't miss it. That's my boy. Okay, we'll let you get back to your class, or what's left of it. Uncle Bob glanced around at whatever he could see on his end. Looks like your professor's having some kind of moment. Tell him I'm sorry about the research thing. Science is hard. I couldn't balance my checkbook last month, so I get it. I'll pass that along. Love you, kid. Don't study too hard. And remember, if anybody gives you trouble, you can be there in 6 hours with Cousin Pete and Mr. Henderson. I know. Love you too. The call disconnected. The holographic display faded. The amphitheater was suddenly very, very quiet. Danny turned to face what remained of his class, maybe 20 students out of the original 300. Professor Krelnak was still sitting on stage, looking like someone had explained to him that his life's work was actually an elaborate misunderstanding, and also the sky was purple now. So, Danny said into the silence. Questions? Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Somewhere in the back row, someone was crying quietly. Right. Okay then. Danny grabbed his bag. Professor, I'm really sorry about your research. If it helps, I thought the presentation was very well organized. Great use of holographics. Very engaging speaking style. Krelnak looked up at him with all 4 eyes. Mr. Torres, are all human families like yours? Danny thought about it. I mean, mine's pretty normal. My roommate's family is way more intense. His dad accidentally joined a planetary defense force during a vacation because he thought it was a guided tour, and they were doing military training exercises. Didn't realize for 3 days. Got a commendation. Of course he did. Krelnak said to nobody in particular. If it makes you feel better, most humans don't actually do the berserker thing very often. We're mostly just trying to pay our bills and figure out what's for dinner and avoid our relatives at the holidays. The super strength stuff only kicks in during emergencies. Or when someone's being really annoying. What constitutes really annoying? Varies by person. For Uncle Bob, it's people who drive too slow in the fast lane. For Aunt Marie, it's anyone who threatens her kids. For Mr. Henderson, it's people who get historical facts wrong, apparently. Krelnak made a sound that the translator struggled with, and eventually rendered as existential despair. Danny's comm device buzzed. He glanced at it. My mom's asking why I called at 3 in the morning and woke up the whole house. He typed a quick response. School project. Everything's fine. Another buzz. He read it and winced. She says to tell you she's sorry her brother-in-law ruined your lecture. She's sending cookies to apologize. She makes really good snickerdoodles. Your mother is sending me cookies, Krelnak repeated flatly. It's a human thing. We apologize with baked goods. Why? Honestly, I have no idea. It's just what we do. Krelnak stood up slowly, carefully, like someone who'd just discovered gravity worked differently than he'd thought. I'm going to cancel my book tour. That's probably smart. And my speaking engagements. Also reasonable. And possibly retire to a monastery where I don't have to think about humans anymore. Do Valorians have monasteries? We do now. I'll build one if I have to. Danny gave him an awkward pat on the shoulder, which made Krelnak flinch like he expected to be launched through a wall. For what it's worth, Professor, your research wasn't totally wrong. You just interpreted it through the wrong lens. Happens to everyone. It happens to people who don't spend 40 years on something. Look at it this way. Now you can write a new book. Humans. We're just built different. A reassessment. Krelnak stared at him. Then, incredibly, he laughed. It was a slightly hysterical laugh, the kind that suggested his grip on sanity was currently being held together by duct tape and stubbornness. But it was a laugh nonetheless. Mr. Torres, you're either going to revolutionize xenobiology or get us all killed. Why not both? Danny grinned. That's the human way. He headed for the exit, leaving behind a nearly empty amphitheater, one devastated professor, and the smoking remains of 4 decades of academic research. As he reached the door, his comm buzzed one more time. Mom, also, your father wants to know if you need anything fixed at your dorm. He's got the weekend free, and he's in one of his moods where he needs a project, or he'll start reorganizing the garage again. Danny typed back. Please tell Dad not to come to the university. He'll terrify my professors. Mom, too late. He's already looking at shuttle schedules. Something about your door sticking last time you called? He wants to fix it properly. Danny stopped walking. He looked at his comm device. He looked back at the amphitheater, where Professor Krelnak was probably still processing his existential crisis. He typed one more message. On second thought, maybe wait until after finals. I don't think the university is ready. Mom, your father says the door won't fix itself and he's coming up next weekend. He's bringing his tools. And possibly Henderson, because they've got a bet going about something. Love you, sweetheart. Don't forget to call your grandmother. Danny closed his eyes and counted to 10. Somewhere on Earth, his family was probably already planning what was either going to be a helpful home repair visit or an incident that would require multiple incident reports and possibly an insurance claim. Somewhere in this amphitheater, Professor Krelnak was reconsidering every life choice that had led him to this moment. And somewhere in the galaxy, 40 billion humans were going about their day, completely unaware that they were all, technically, the stuff of legend. Just regular people, having regular days, occasionally ripping doors off things when properly motivated. Humanity. They're just like that. Danny left the amphitheater, already composing an email to campus security warning them about his dad's impending visit. It probably wouldn't help. It never did. But hey, that was the human way.